The morning sun poured through the windows of the small cafe as Lisa wiped down the counter. Her fingers moved quickly, but her mind was elsewhere. She touched the fading bruise on her wrist and pulled her sleeve down to cover it. Just get through today, she whispered to herself. That had become her daily prayer. The bell above the door jingled. Lisa looked up and forced a smile as a tall man with kind eyes walked in. She had never seen him before, but there was something gentle about him that made her heart skip a beat. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm and deep. "I just moved to the neighborhood. People say this place has the best coffee in town." "You're too kind," Lisa said, tucking a strand of brown hair behind her ear. "What can I get for you?" "Whatever you recommend," he replied with a smile that reached his eyes. Lisa prepared a cappuccino and added a sprinkle of cinnamon on top, something special she did for customers she liked. As she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed, and she felt a small spark. "I'm Jack, by the way," he said. "Lisa," she replied, then jumped when her phone buzzed in her pocket. Her face fell as she read the message. "Where are you? Who are you talking to?" "Everything okay?" Jack asked, concern in his voice. "Fine," she said too quickly. "Just work stuff." Jack nodded, not pushing further. He took his coffee to a table by the window and opened his laptop. Every now and then, he would glance up and catch her looking at him. They would both smile and look away. The morning rush came and went. Jack stayed, ordering a second coffee and one of Lisa's homemade pastries. He told her he was an architect working on designs for a new community center. She found herself lingering at his table, enjoying how he talked about his passion for creating spaces that brought people together. "You should come see it when it's done," he said. For a brief moment, Lisa allowed herself to imagine a future where she could accept such invitations. A future without fear. The cafe door swung open with force. Lisa's body tensed before she even turned around. Mark stood there, his eyes quickly finding her near Jack's table. "There you are," Mark said, his voice falsely pleasant but with an edge that Lisa knew all too well. "I've been calling you." "I'm working, Mark," she said quietly, already moving away from Jack's table. "I told you I can't answer my phone during shifts." Mark's eyes darted to Jack, who was watching them with a slight frown. "Who's this?" "Just a customer," Lisa said quickly. Jack stood and extended his hand. Jack Wilson, new in town. Mark ignored the outstretched hand. "Let's talk outside, Lisa." It wasn't a request. Lisa followed him out, feeling Jack's eyes on her back. Outside, Mark gripped her arm just tight enough to hurt without leaving marks. "Who is he?" Mark demanded. "Nobody. A customer. I swear." Mark studied her face for lies. "You're mine, Lisa. Don't forget that." "I know," she whispered, the words bitter in her mouth. When she returned inside, Jack was paying his bill. Their eyes met, and she saw something in his that made her chest ache, not pity, but understanding. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said simply. After he left, Lisa found a napkin under his coffee cup with a phone number and a note. "If you ever need anything at all." Lisa quickly tucked the napkin into her pocket, heart racing. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something break through the fear. A tiny, dangerous spark of hope. Jack returned to the cafe every morning for the next 2 weeks. Each visit lasted longer than the one before. Lisa found herself looking forward to seeing him, timing her breaks so she could talk with him for a few minutes. Today, Jack sat at his usual table by the window. Lisa brought over his coffee without him asking. Their fingers touched as she handed him the cup, and neither pulled away too quickly. "Thank you," he said, his eyes holding hers. "Your coffee makes my day better." "Just the coffee?" Lisa asked, surprised by her own boldness. Jack smiled. "No, not just the coffee." Lisa felt warmth spread through her chest. She hadn't flirted with anyone in years. Mark had made sure of that. Speaking of Mark, he had been worse lately. Last night he had thrown her phone against the wall when a text message came in from her coworker. "You're quiet today," Jack said, bringing her back to the present. Lisa touched her cheek where makeup covered a faint bruise. "Just tired." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't press. Instead, he asked, "What do you like to do when you're not making the best coffee in town?" The question caught her off guard. No one had asked about her interests in so long. "I like to bake," she said, "not just the stuff we sell here. I make fancy cakes with decorations, At least I used to. Why did you stop? Lisa looked down. Mark says it's a waste of time and money. She hadn't meant to say his name. Jack's expression changed, became more serious. Mark is your boyfriend? He asked carefully. Lisa nodded, then jumped when the cafe door opened. It wasn't Mark, just a young couple looking for breakfast. You seem afraid of him, Jack said quietly. Lisa started to deny it, the words ready on her tongue from years of practice, but something in Jack's eyes made her stop. He has a temper, she admitted. It was the most honest thing she had said about Mark to anyone in years. Jack reached across the table, his hand close to hers but not touching. The offer on that napkin still stands. If you need help, any kind of help. Lisa pulled her hand back, heart pounding. I should get back to work. Later that afternoon, Lisa's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. This is Jack. I hope it's okay that I got your number from your coworker. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. Lisa stared at the message, both thrilled and terrified. She deleted it immediately, knowing Mark often checked her phone, but she memorized the number first. That night, Mark came home drunk and angry about something at work. When he saw Lisa smiling at her own thoughts, he demanded to know what she was happy about. Nothing, she said quickly. You're lying, he snapped, backing her against the wall. You've been different lately. Who is he? There's no one, Lisa said, but her voice trembled. Mark grabbed her wrists, pinning them above her head. I saw how you looked at that guy in the cafe. You think I'm stupid. His grip tightened painfully. Lisa closed her eyes, waiting for what would come next. You belong to me, Mark whispered against her ear. Don't forget that. Later, in the bathroom, Lisa examined the new bruises on her wrists. She thought about Jack's kind eyes, about the way she felt when they talked, like she was a person with thoughts and feelings that mattered. She took out the spare phone her friend had given her months ago, the one Mark didn't know about. With shaking fingers, she typed a message to Jack's number. This is Lisa. I'm okay tonight, but I might need that help someday soon. She pressed send before she could change her mind, then hid the phone in her secret spot behind the bathroom cabinet. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a different life, one where she wasn't afraid all the time. One where she might wake up next to someone gentle like Jack. The thought both terrified and thrilled her. 3 days passed with no sign of Lisa at the cafe. Jack came each morning, ordered his usual coffee, and left disappointed when told she wasn't working. On the 4th day, he was about to leave when his phone buzzed. I need help. Can you meet me at Central Park, the bench near the duck pond, 2 p.m.? Jack arrived 30 minutes early, his heart pounding against his ribs. When Lisa finally appeared, walking slowly toward the bench, he had to stop himself from running to her. Her eye was swollen, a deep purple bruise spreading across her cheek. She wore a long-sleeved shirt despite the warm day, but Jack could still see finger-shaped bruises on her wrists. I'm sorry, she said as she sat beside him, leaving space between them. I didn't know who else to call. Jack wanted to touch her, to pull her into his arms, but he kept his hands in his lap. What happened? Mark found the phone, she said, her voice barely audible. He saw our messages. She looked down at her hands. It was bad this time. Worse than before. Jack's jaw tightened. Did you go to the hospital? The police? Lisa shook her head. Mark's uncle is a cop. It wouldn't help. She looked up, meeting Jack's eyes for the first time. I'm leaving him today, but I need a place to stay, just for a night or two until I figure things out. Stay with me, Jack said without hesitation. I have a spare room. You'll be safe there. Lisa bit her lip. Mark will look for me. He might come after you. Let him try, Jack said, his voice steady. They sat in silence for a moment, watching ducks glide across the pond. Why are you helping me? Lisa finally asked. You barely know me. Jack looked at her, his eyes warm. My sister was in a relationship like yours. She didn't get out in time. He swallowed hard. I couldn't help her, but I can help you. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and placed her hand over his. Thank you. They made a plan. Lisa would go back to the apartment while Mark was at work, pack only what she absolutely needed, and meet Jack at the bus station. From there, they would go to his place. What if he comes home early? Jack asked, worry in his voice. He won't. Thursday is poker night with his friends. He won't be home until late. Still, Jack insisted on waiting nearby just in case. They exchanged one last look before Lisa walked away, her steps a little stronger than before. 3 hours later, Lisa slipped into Jack's car, a small bag clutched to her chest. Did you get everything? He asked, starting the engine. Lisa nodded, then reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She rolled down the window and threw it as far as she could into some bushes. He can't track me now, she said. Jack's apartment was small but clean and welcoming. Lisa stood in the middle of the living room, suddenly unsure. The spare room is through there, Jack said, pointing to a door. Bathrooms across the hall. Make yourself at home. Lisa nodded, still not moving. I don't know how to thank you. Jack set her bag down gently. You don't have to thank me. You're the brave one here. That night, after showing Lisa where everything was, Jack made dinner. They ate pasta at his small kitchen table, and Lisa managed a real smile when Jack told a funny story about his latest project at work. Later, as Lisa settled into the unfamiliar bed, she heard soft knocking at her door. Yes, she called, tensing slightly. Jack's voice came through the door, gentle and reassuring. I just wanted to say that I put a chair under the front doorknob, and I'm a light sleeper. No one's getting in here tonight. Lisa felt tears well up again. Thank you, she whispered. Good night, Lisa, Jack said. Tomorrow will be better. For the first time in years, Lisa fell asleep without fear, the sound of Jack moving quietly in the next room, more comforting than she could have imagined. Lisa woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, panic gripped her chest until she remembered where she was. Jack's apartment, safe. The smell of coffee and something sweet pulled her from bed. She found clothes in her bag and changed quickly, listening to Jack moving around in the kitchen. When she finally opened her door, Jack looked up from the stove with a warm smile. Good morning, he said. I hope you like pancakes. Lisa couldn't remember the last time someone had made her breakfast. It smells amazing. They ate together, the silence comfortable between them. Lisa's phone would have been buzzing nonstop with angry messages from Mark by now. The quiet felt like a gift. What happens now? Jack asked gently. Lisa set down her fork. I need to find a place to stay, and a job. Mark will go to the cafe looking for me. Jack nodded. You can stay here as long as you need, and I might be able to help with the job. My friend owns a bakery across town. She's always looking for help. I can't ask you to do all this, Lisa said, overwhelmed by his kindness. Jack's eyes met hers. You're not asking. I'm offering. Later that morning, they went to the police station to file a report and get a temporary restraining order against Mark. Jack sat beside Lisa, his steady presence giving her strength as she showed the officer her bruises and told her story. Afterward, they walked through a park, both needing fresh air after the heaviness of the police station. My sister never did that, Jack said quietly. Never reported him. Lisa looked at Jack's profile, seeing pain etched there. What happened to her? Jack was quiet for a long moment. He pushed her down the stairs during a fight. The doctors said she died instantly. Lisa stopped walking and turned to face him. Without thinking, she reached up and touched his cheek. I'm so sorry, Jack. Jack closed his eyes briefly at her touch. When he opened them, they were bright with emotion. That's why I noticed your bruises that first day. I promised myself I'd never ignore the signs again. Lisa's hand fell away, but Jack caught it in his own. His touch was gentle, nothing like Mark's demanding grip. I know we haven't known each other long, Jack said, but I want you to know that I care about what happens to you. The words hung between them, honest and bare. Lisa felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the sun overhead. I care about you too, she whispered. It was frightening to admit, but also freeing. Jack smiled and squeezed her hand before releasing it. They continued walking, a new awareness between them. That afternoon, Jack took Lisa to meet his friend Beth at her bakery. Beth, a woman with bright red hair and kind eyes, didn't ask questions about Lisa's bruises. She just showed Lisa around the kitchen and offered her a job starting the next day. Jack says you're good with fancy cakes, Beth said. We could use someone with those skills. For the first time in years, Lisa felt hope blooming inside her. A safe place to stay. A job doing something she loved. And Jack, whose gentle strength made her feel protected without feeling trapped. That evening, they cooked dinner together in Jack's small kitchen. Their bodies moved around each other in the tight space, hands occasionally brushing, sending tingles up Lisa's arm. After dinner, they sat on Jack's couch watching a movie. Lisa found herself moving closer to him as the night went on, drawn to his warmth. When she finally leaned her head against his shoulder, Jack carefully put his arm around her. "Is this okay?" he asked softly. Lisa nodded, her body relaxing against his. More than okay. She fell asleep like that, curled against Jack's side. When she woke hours later, she found herself lying on the couch with a blanket tucked around her and Jack sleeping in the armchair nearby, keeping watch over her even in sleep. Lisa watched him for a moment, her heart full. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where love didn't hurt. 2 weeks passed in a peaceful rhythm. Lisa worked at Beth's bakery during the day, discovering her love for cake decorating all over again. Jack picked her up each evening, insisting it was on his way home from the architecture firm. They both knew it wasn't. Their evenings fell into a comfortable pattern, cooking dinner together, talking about their days, watching movies on the couch. Jack never pushed for more than Lisa was ready to give. Each night he made sure the doors were locked before saying goodnight. Tonight, Lisa stood in the kitchen doorway watching Jack chop vegetables for their stir-fry. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled up, revealing strong forearms. Warmth pooled in her belly as she studied him. "See something you like?" Jack teased, catching her staring. Lisa didn't look away. Maybe. Jack's knife paused mid-chop. The air between them changed, charged with something that had been building day by day. "Lisa," he said, his voice deeper than usual, "I don't want to rush you." Lisa took a step toward him. "You haven't. You've been so patient, too patient maybe." Jack set the knife down carefully. "I just want you to feel safe." "I do," she said, taking another step. "With you, I feel safe." She stood before him now, close enough to feel the heat of his body. Slowly giving her time to back away, Jack raised his hand to her face. His fingers traced the faded yellow bruise on her cheek, now barely visible. "You're so beautiful," he whispered. Lisa leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. When she opened them, she found Jack watching her with such tenderness it made her heart ache. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. Instead of answering, Lisa rose onto her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. But when Jack's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, the kiss deepened. Lisa felt herself melting into him, her body remembering desires she had buried for years. Jack's hands stayed respectfully at her waist, even as the kiss grew more heated. It was Lisa who pulled back first, breathing hard. "The vegetables are going to burn," she said with a small laugh. Jack smiled, his eyes dark with want, but he stepped back to the cutting board. "We wouldn't want that." They finished making dinner, the air between them electric with possibility. Every accidental touch sent shivers through Lisa's body. They ate quickly, both distracted by the promise of what might come after. When they finished, Lisa took Jack's hand and led him to the couch. She sat close to him, closer than ever before. "I want to tell you something," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Before Mark, I used to be different. More confident, more passionate." Jack listened intently, his thumb drawing small circles on the back of her hand. "He took that away from me," she continued. "Made me afraid of my own desires. But being with you these past weeks, I'm starting to remember who I was, who I am." "And who is that?" Jack asked softly. Lisa met his gaze. "Someone who wants to live again, feel again." Jack's free hand came up to cup her face. "I want that for you too." "I know we haven't known each other long," Lisa said, echoing his words from weeks ago. "But I feel like I've been waiting for you my whole life." Jack's eyes softened. "I feel the same way." This time when they kissed, there was no hesitation. Lisa's hands slid up Jack's chest to his shoulders, feeling the strength there. His arms encircled her, pulling her closer until she was nearly in his lap. When Jack's lips moved to her neck, Lisa gasped, pleasure coursing through her. She felt his smile against her skin. "Is this okay?" he asked, his breath warm on her throat. "More than okay," Lisa whispered, the words becoming a sigh as his mouth found a sensitive spot below her ear. They stayed like that for a long time, exploring each other with unhurried touches and deep, languid kisses. There was no rush, no demand, just the slow building of desire between two people, finding each other after too long alone. When Jack finally pulled back, his breathing uneven, Lisa saw in his eyes everything she had ever wanted. Desire tempered with respect, passion mingled with tenderness. "Stay with me tonight," she whispered. "Just to sleep. I want to fall asleep in your arms." Jack pressed his forehead to hers. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." 1 month had passed since Lisa left Mark. The restraining order was in place and life had settled into a sweet routine. Lisa had moved into Jack's spare room permanently, though she spent most nights in his bed, wrapped in his arms. Today was Saturday and they had planned a picnic in the park. Lisa had baked fresh bread and made special desserts. Jack packed a basket with wine, cheese, and fruit. The day was perfect. Warm sunshine, blue sky, and a light breeze carrying the scent of flowers. They found a quiet spot under a large oak tree. Jack spread a blanket on the grass while Lisa arranged their food. As they ate and talked, Lisa marveled at how different life could be. With Mark, she had always felt on edge, waiting for his mood to change. With Jack, she felt peace. "What are you thinking about?" Jack asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Lisa smiled. "Just how happy I am. How different things are now." Jack reached over and took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "You deserve all the happiness in the world." They were clearing away the remains of their meal when Lisa suddenly froze. Her face went pale, and Jack turned to see what had frightened her. Mark was walking across the park, his eyes locked on them. Even from a distance, Jack could see the anger in his face. "He's not supposed to be within 500 feet of you," Jack said, standing up. "Stay here. I'll handle this." "No," Lisa said, grabbing his arm. "We'll handle it together." They stood side by side as Mark approached, stopping just at the edge of their picnic space. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled. "So this is where you've been hiding?" Mark said, his voice slurring slightly. He was drunk. "With him." "You need to leave, Mark," Lisa said, her voice stronger than she felt. "There's a restraining order." Mark laughed, an ugly sound. "You think a piece of paper will keep me away from what's mine?" Jack stepped forward. "She's not yours. She never was. Now leave before I call the police." Mark's gaze shifted to Jack, hatred burning in his eyes. "You think you're better than me? You think you can just take her?" "No one took me," Lisa said, finding her courage. "I chose to leave. I chose freedom. I chose Jack." Mark's face twisted with rage. He took a step toward Lisa, but Jack moved between them. "Don't," Jack warned. For a moment, they stood frozen in a triangle of tension. Then Mark's shoulders slumped, defeat replacing anger. "You'll come back," he said to Lisa, but the conviction was gone from his voice. "You always do." "Not this time," Lisa said quietly. "Never again." Something in her tone must have reached him because Mark looked at her with new eyes, seeing perhaps for the first time the woman she had become, stronger, braver, no longer afraid. "I've called the police," a woman's voice said. They turned to see an older lady on a nearby bench, phone in hand. "They're on their way." Mark looked around, suddenly aware of the other people in the park watching him. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his steps unsteady. Lisa's legs gave out, and she sank onto the blanket. Jack knelt beside her, gathering her into his arms. "Are you okay?" he asked, stroking her hair. Lisa nodded against his chest. "I didn't think I could do that. Stand up to him." "You were amazing," Jack said, pride in his voice. "So brave." They stayed like that until the police arrived. After giving their statements and confirming the restraining order, they packed up their picnic, neither in the mood to stay. Back at the apartment, Lisa stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash away the tension of the encounter. When she came out wrapped in a towel, she found Jack waiting in the bedroom with a cup of tea. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering the cup. Lisa set it aside and moved into his arms instead. "I need you." Jack held her close, his hands gentle on her back. "I'm right here." Lisa looked up at him, a new certainty in her eyes. "I love you, Jack. I should have said it sooner." Jack's face softened. "I love you too. I think I have since the first day you put cinnamon on my coffee. Their lips met in a kiss that started tender but quickly grew passionate. Lisa's towel fell away as Jack's hands explored her body with reverent touches. Tonight there would be no holding back, no ghosts between them. For the first time, Lisa gave herself completely to a man who saw her strength even when she couldn't. 1 year had passed since that day in the park. Lisa stood in the doorway of her bakery, watching the morning light spill across the freshly polished floors. She ran her fingers over the sign. Lisa's Sweet Creations, still amazed that this place was truly hers. The bell above the door jingled and Lisa turned with a smile, expecting the delivery man. Instead, Jack stood there, handsome in his work suit, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. "Happy anniversary," he said, crossing the room to kiss her softly. Lisa took the flowers, burying her face in their brightness. "You remembered?" "Of course I did. 1 year since you opened this place," Jack said, looking around proudly. "Look at what you've built." After the confrontation with Mark in the park, Lisa had thrown herself into baking. Beth had encouraged her to enter a local competition, which she won. The prize money, combined with a small business loan Jack helped her apply for, had made this bakery possible. "I couldn't have done it without you," Lisa said, setting the flowers on the counter. Jack shook his head. "You did this, Lisa. All of it. I just cheered from the sidelines." Lisa wrapped her arms around his waist, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. In the year since opening the bakery, she had moved officially into Jack's bedroom. Their days were full and happy, the shadow of Mark growing fainter as time passed. "I have a surprise for you tonight," Jack said, his eyes twinkling with secret knowledge. "Be ready at 7. Lisa raised an eyebrow. "What kind of surprise?" Jack simply kissed her forehead, the kind you have to wait for. He left her wondering as she prepared for the day's customers. The bakery had quickly become popular, her custom cakes in particular drawing orders from across the city. Today she had 3 specialty orders to complete: a wedding cake, a baby shower cake, and a retirement cake. As Lisa worked, her mind kept returning to Jack and his surprise. Their life together had been filled with small, beautiful moments. Jack never tried to control her like Mark had. Instead, he encouraged her to grow, to try new things, to become more fully herself. At 6, Lisa locked up the bakery and headed upstairs to the small apartment they had renovated above the shop. She showered and changed into a blue dress that Jack had once said matched her eyes. At exactly 7, Jack knocked on the door, though he had a key. When Lisa opened it, she found him in a suit, holding another surprise, a small velvet box. "Jack," she whispered, her heart suddenly racing. He didn't drop to one knee as she had expected. Instead, he took her hand and led her to their couch. "Lisa," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "This past year has been the best of my life. Watching you heal, grow, and build something beautiful from the ashes of what happened. It's been an honor to stand beside you." Lisa felt tears gather in her eyes as Jack continued. "I'm not asking you to be mine because you belong to no one but yourself. I'm asking if I can be yours, if we can build a life together as equals, as partners." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring, a sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. "Will you marry me?" Lisa took his face in her hands, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." Jack slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. Later that night, as they lay tangled in their sheets, Lisa traced patterns on Jack's chest, her ring catching the moonlight from the window. "I never thought I could be this happy," she said softly. "After Mark, I thought something inside me was broken forever." Jack caught her hand and kissed it. "Nothing about you was ever broken. Wounded, maybe. But even then, you were the strongest person I'd ever met." Lisa rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you hadn't come into that cafe that morning?" Jack was quiet for a moment. "I think we would have found each other anyway. Some things are meant to be." Lisa smiled in the darkness, believing him. From the depths of fear and pain, she had found not just safety but joy, not just escape but freedom, not just a protector but a partner. Outside their window, the city continued its nighttime rhythm. Inside, in the circle of Jack's arms, Lisa drifted to sleep, secure in the knowledge that love, real love, had finally found her.